My sister pretended to be disabled for 15 years to get money from our parents. When I exposed her, they kicked me out and gave her my share of the inheritance. My name is Emily. I live in Derby, in a small flat above a coffee shop. I'm 28. I work as an accountant in a small business. Every month I save money, for repairs, for hospital bills, so that one day I can have my own house. Not a fancy one, just my own. But 5 years ago I had almost nothing, because I was kicked out of the house. Not for a crime, not for lying, but for telling the truth. My sister, Sophie, is 2 years older. She has been sick all her life. Since the age of 13, disabled. Can't walk. Can't eat herself. Can't speak clearly. Diagnosis: cephalomyelitic dysplasia, a rare spinal disease. Doctors said she would never recover. My parents believed me. So did I. She lived in a special room on the first floor, with a bed that had gotten smaller, a wheelchair, and medical equipment. My parents took care of her for years. My mother gave up work. My father worked 2 jobs. The state paid for welfare. There were charity meetings, and every dollar went to her. And I went to school, then to college. I worked after school. I paid for my books, my clothes, my transportation. No one said, "You're doing great." Only, "Sophie is tired. Make her some tea. Sophie is in pain. Take off her blanket. Sophie can't, but you can do it." I didn't complain. I thought, she's alone. I'm healthy. It's my role to help. But over time, amazing things began to happen. One day I came home from work. It was late. I heard laughter in her room. Not like hers. Loud. Genuine. I opened the door and saw she was standing, without a wheelchair, holding onto the table, and laughing at the video on her phone. I fell silent. "Sophie!" She turned around. Her face was calm. No pain. No weakness. "Are you standing?" "Yes. For a minute." "Why?" "To see if I can." "But you can't walk." "Well, maybe I can. And all the medicine and the help," she said. "But I'm not as bad as they think." I don't understand if she's joking. Is it true? Is it such an improvement? But that night I couldn't sleep. A week later I stayed home. I said I was sick. I came to her room. I pretended to have left. But I stayed behind the door. 5 minutes later she left the room. Alone. Without a wheelchair. I walked through the kitchen. I made myself some noodles. I sat down. I watched YouTube. Then I went to the bathroom. Not even limping. I stood there and watched. And for the first time in my life I felt I was being lied to. My whole life. I didn't scream. I didn't run to my parents. I started collecting evidence. Photos. Videos on my phone. Recordings from my watch. When she thought no one was there, she walked. Sometimes she even ran in the garden. She laughed. She spoke normally. She also talked to her boyfriend on the phone. "No, they don't know anything." "Yes, the money is going to me. If they see, I'll lose everything." I read it like I was in horror. But it was true. She had been pretending to be sick for 15 years to get money, attention, and vacations from all over the world. And I worked, kept quiet, had nothing. A month later I gathered everything. I put it on the table. I called my parents home. "I need to talk." "What happened?" "It's about Sophie." "Is she sick again?" "No. She's not sick." I showed the photo, the video, the correspondence. My parents watched. They were silent. Then my mother said, "This can't be." "It's true," I said. "You're lying," my father said. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not lying. I'm showing." Or maybe she just got better. She got better? And 15 years is a lie? "You've always envied her," my mother said. "You've always wanted to be in her place." I fell silent, not out of surprise, out of pain, because they didn't see the truth. They saw me as an enemy. A week later, they kicked me out. "We can't have a person in the house who destroys our family," my father said. "But you've seen the evidence." "We don't believe them." "Why?" "Because Sophie is our child. And you, we don't need you anymore." I gathered my things. Not much. Books, photos, computer, and went out. On the threshold, my mother said, "We are giving your part of the inheritance to Sophie." "Why?" "She needs it. And me. You will cope." "How is she?" "You are not sick." I went out. I stood in the rain. And I thought, I did not lose my home. I lost my family. After I was kicked out, I lived with a friend, Louise, in Nottingham. My room was 10 square meters. I slept on the sofa. I didn't want to be in the way. I got up at 6 o'clock every morning so I wouldn't have to take a long bath. Every evening I asked, "Are you sure I'm not in the way?" She said, "You're not in the way." But I could see that her boyfriend didn't welcome me. Her mother frowned when I stayed for the evening, and I knew I couldn't stay here forever. I applied for housing through social services. "You don't have children, you're not disabled, you're not pregnant," they said. "We can't put you on the website." "But I've been kicked out. It's a family matter. Where can I live?" "We can put you in a temporary youth shelter." A week later, I was accepted into Hope House in Leicester. It wasn't a prison, but it was strict. Here were the rules. Leave only with permission. No phones after 10 p.m. Daily report of what I did. No men in the room. Girls lived there. Some had run away from the population, some had lost their parents, some simply had nowhere to live. We were all temporary. As if we didn't belong to anyone. I worked as an accountant, but after the expulsion I was fired. "We can't have an employee without a permanent address," said the manager. "But I work." "Show me your registration card." "There isn't one." "Then come when you have one." I found a job at the Daily Cup Cafe, washing dishes. £9.20 an hour. 6 hours a day. My hands turned red. My back hurt. But I had money for food, for travel, for a charger. One day I saw my mother. She came to the cafe. With Sophie. In a wheelchair. Both in new clothes. Sophie held a phone. A new one I'd never had. I hid in the kitchen. I didn't want them to see me doing the dishes. Not because I was ashamed of my work, but because they were buying with her money that could have been mine. Money I'd been earning, silently, for hours. They ordered cappuccinos. They saw me. Mom said, "Oh, it's you." "Yes," I said. "How are you?" "I'm alive. We thought you'd find a better job. This one's temporary." "Where do you live?" "In a shelter." "Oh, well, you'll be fine." "Yes," I said. "You said, you'll be fine." They left. And I stood there washing the cups and thought, they don't even feel guilty. To them, I'm just the one who destroyed the family. And Sophie is a sick child who needs to be protected. But I already knew, this is not about the illness. This is about the lie that they support because it is convenient for them. Because they do not want to admit that they have lived in deception for 15 years. That they have paid money, assistance, time for nothing. I did not want revenge. I wanted the truth to be recognized, at least for those who will one day say, "They do not hear me. They do not believe me." I filed a complaint with the police. "I have evidence of fraud," I said. "What fraud?" "My sister pretended to be disabled for 15 years in order to receive state assistance. Do you have official medical confirmation that she is healthy?" "No." "But there is a video, a photo, a testimony. This is not evidence of a crime. These are features of the accusation." "But she received money." "Without an official investigation, we cannot intervene." "I didn't show up." I filed with Social Security. 3 months later, I got a response. "A review has been conducted." Sophie Harvey's face showed limited mobility during the examination. The diagnosis has not changed. Assistance will continue. I read this out of sheer force, not out of annoyance, out of exhaustion, because I understood the system doesn't see the truth if it doesn't fit the papers. Besides, if you see a person walking, laughing, running, if the doctor said sick, they remain sick. But I didn't stop. I started writing, not for fame, for myself. I created a blog, Invisible Sister. I talked about how to be normal in a family where you are compared to a victim. How to work when you are considered selfish. How to tell the truth and be kicked out for it. A month later, a girl wrote to me. "My name is Kate. My brother has been pretending to be autistic for 10 years to avoid going to school. His parents believe him. When I said I saw him play football, they called me a liar. I read your blog and for the first time I heard, 'You are not alone.' I read that and cried. Not from pain, from relief. Because I realized I am not just fighting for myself. I am giving a voice to those who are silenced. Those who are called jealous, selfish, those who destroy families, just because they see the truth. I don't know if the system will ever admit that Sophie cheated, or return the money, or if Mom and Dad will ever say, 'We were wrong.' Living in a shelter was hard not because of the conditions, but because of the feeling that you were temporary, as if you had no place in the world, that you were a problem that they were trying to tolerate, not a person who deserved to live. I worked at the Daily Cup, but after 6 months I was fired. 'We are opening a new cafe,' the manager said. 'We need people with experience.' But I have been working here for 6 months. Yes, but you do not have a permanent address. And you cannot be on the staff list without one. And when will I find one? Come then. But now we cannot wait.' I left the cafe with a backpack in which there was only an old notebook and a charger. And for the first time in a long time I thought, maybe they are right? Maybe I really do not deserve a normal life? Maybe I am just the one who destroyed the family? But then I called Kate, the girl who wrote to me after the blog. Her words, "You're the first to hear me." And I realized, I can't stop. Not for myself, but for those who are still silent. I found a job in a local stationery shop. £8.90 an hour. Stacking goods, serving customers, closing the till. Not what I trained for. But the money came in for the phone, for travel, etc. One day a woman came up to me. "I read your blog," she said. "How do you know it's me? You have the same name. And you're from Derby." "Yes. My name is Miss Fields. I work for a support organization for victims of domestic fraud." "And what?" "We're looking for a story for the campaign. Do you want to use yours?" "If you let me." "And what will it give?" "Attention. Maybe changes in the system. And most importantly, it will become easier for other people to speak out." I didn't answer right away. I was afraid that Sophie would start playing sick even more. That her parents would say that I had ruined her life. That I was blamed for everything. But I remembered standing in the dark, watching her walk, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I titled the letter, "You'll Do It," and that laughter in the room. "Okay," I said, "but no photo." "Understood. I want to speak for myself." "No problem." A month later the story came out. Not on big TV. On local radio, Midlands Voices. Title: The Sister Who Never Got Sick. I told everything, simply, without drama, about how she walked, how I found the evidence, how I was kicked out, how they gave away my entire inheritance. After the broadcast, they started writing to me. Not a lot, but each letter was like a ray. My brother has been pretending to have asthma for 12 years to avoid going to school. When I told the truth, they sent me to a psychologist as aggressive. "Thank you for speaking up. I'm a mother. And I understand. We often believe what we want to see, not what we see. Thank you for the truth. My name is Lisa. I pretended to be sick for 10 years to get attention. I'm in therapy now. I want to ask my sister for forgiveness." But not everyone was supportive. A week later, I received a message from Sophie. "You destroyed me. Now everyone thinks I'm a liar. I'm being seen by doctors. They're checking me out. And you're just a poor girl washing dishes. Who are you in this story?" I didn't answer, but I understood. She was afraid. Afraid of losing what she had built on lies. And now she's trying to make me feel guilty so I don't feel like it. 2 months later, I was invited to a youth housing program. "We saw your performance," they said. "You have a chance of getting a flat." "Why?" "Because you didn't show up." "But I don't have much money." "We're offering rent for £300 a month, with the option of paying in installments for the first 3 months. I signed the contract. Not with joy, with relief. For the first time in years, I had my own shelter, my own walls, my own space where no one would say, "You'll manage." I bought a lamp, a framed photo, a small rug, and I put on the shelf the same book I had taken from home. Shakespeare. Ophelia. The drowning one. But I wasn't drowning. I got out. One day I met my mother. On the street. She stopped. "Are you alive?" "Yes," I said. "We heard about your blog." "So what?" "You shouldn't have done that." "What should I have done?" "Keep quiet. You ruined Sophie." "I didn't ruin her. I told the truth." "But she's sick." "No. She's acting." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I don't want another girl to leave the house with a backpack and think I wasn't there." She paused. She looked at me. Then she said, "I don't know who you are now." "This isn't about you," I said. "This is about me. And I'm not who you made me out to be." My flat in Leicester was small. 1 room. A kitchen with 1 fire. The window looked out onto a courtyard. But it was mine. Not temporary. Not someone else's. Not lost. I found a job as an accountant in a small firm that didn't require permanent registration. I started at £11 an hour. I worked 8 hours. I didn't complain. I didn't ask. I just did it. And 6 months later, I was promoted to a permanent position. The first time I got paid, I didn't buy anything for myself. I saved half. I spent the other half on a new laptop. Not for games. Not for films. But to keep writing. To have a place to guard the truth. I continued my blog, The Invisible Sister. Now it's not just about myself. I started posting stories from others. The girl who looked after her sick brother while he played football. The boy who paid for his flat because his sister couldn't work. The mother who understood that her son was faking it to avoid going to school. Each story is like a mirror. Each one proves that this is not uncommon. It's a system where attention is a reward for being selective, and those who work silently are simply not seen. A woman from Bristol once wrote to me, "My name is Hannah. My husband has been faking chronic fatigue syndrome for 8 years. He doesn't work. We live on my salary." When I told him I saw him play tennis, he said I hated him. I read your story, and for the first time I thought, it's not my fault. I replied to her, not as an expert, as someone who has been through it. She told me how to find support, how to gather evidence, how not to blame myself for seeing the truth. A month later she wrote, I filed for divorce, and for the first time in 10 years I can breathe freely. I read it and felt a certain strength, not with pride, with responsibility, because I understood, my word is not just a story. It is a key for others, the key that opened the door behind which they stood for a long time. But not all doors open easily. A year after the first story, a journalist from BBC Midlands found me. "We want to make a documentary about you," she said. "Why?" "Because it is important. But I am not a hero." You don't have to be a hero to change the system. It is enough to be the one who said it first. The story came out 2 months later. Title: The Sister Who Spoke. They showed me how I work, how I read letters, how I stand by the window in my apartment. Not with a microphone, not with a speech, just like a normal person who survived. After the broadcast, other people wrote to me, many with similar stories. Someone said, "You changed my life." Someone, "This is the first time I've told my family this." But there were other messages. From Sophie. "Now I've been removed from state benefits. The doctors say I have to take a mobility test. Everyone looks at me like I'm a liar. You ruined me. If anything happens to me, it's on your conscience." I read it and didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. I understood. She didn't want help. She wanted me to feel guilty, to keep quiet, to make the world think of her as a victim again. But I couldn't do it. A week later, my mother called me. "I saw the story," she said. "So what? You look exhausted." "Yes," I answered, "because you fought. We thought you were exaggerating. And now I don't know who to believe." Watch the video. But she's my child. And so was I. She fell silent. Then she said, "I can't take back what happened, but I want to know how you live." "Why?" "Because you're my daughter. And I might have missed everything." I didn't say yes. I just said, "I won't date until you say, 'I'm sorry I didn't believe you.' And if I don't say it, then we'll stay where we are, you with her, me without you." I hung up the phone and looked out the window at the small park, at the girl who came up to her father, hugging him. Today I am 30. I live in Leicester, in the same apartment that I once considered a dream. It has changed a little. There is a new lamp, a bookshelf, a picture on the wall, a gift from Louise. But the main thing is that I recognize myself in it. I still work as an accountant, not in a big firm, not in a high position, but I am stable. I have money for doctors, for travel, to help others. However, I continue The Invisible Sister. Not as a blog. Now, as a real initiative. We have a free hotline, online chat with psychologists, a mentoring program for those who have come out of similar situations, course, How to Speak the Truth When You Are Not Heard. We are not a large organization. There are only 5 of us. But every month we help dozens of people find their voice. A girl came up to me one day after a speech at a university. "I read your story," she said. "My brother, who is 11, says he has panic attacks. But I've seen him laugh with his friends when he thinks no one is watching. When I told my mother, they sent me to a psychologist for being aggressive." "And what did you do?" "I wrote to you. And now I'm talking to another sister who went through the same thing. I don't feel like a liar." I nodded, and she said, "You're not a liar. You're the one who sees. And that's harder than being silent." She started crying, and in that moment I realized, this isn't just helping. This is breaking a chain. A chain in which one child is rewarded for being sick and another is punished for being truthful. Sophie doesn't write anymore. Mom calls sometimes. "I'm reading your program," she says. "You're doing an important job." "Thank you," I say. "Can I help you?" "Yes." "How?" "Say it out loud. I was wrong. I didn't believe you." "I can't." "Then just listen." "I'm listening." "That's enough for now." I haven't forgiven. I don't know if I ever will. Forgiveness isn't an obligation. It's a choice. And I'm not ready yet. But I didn't let them use my life. One day I got a letter from Sophie. Not an email. A paper one. On a regular piece of paper. "I can't play anymore. The doctors check me every month. The aid has stopped. I don't know who I am without it. I don't work anywhere. I can't do anything. And every time someone looks at me, I hear, 'Liar.' But I don't know how to live now." I read it. I looked out the window. And I said out loud, "I didn't want to win. I wanted you to tell the truth. So that you wouldn't live your life under a lie. So that you wouldn't destroy others to become a victim." I didn't answer the letter. But I kept it. Not as a trophy. But as a warning. A lie doesn't just destroy trust. It destroys the one who feeds it. That's why I keep talking. Not for fame. Not for money. And because I know, as long as there's at least one girl who was kicked out for the truth, I have no right to be silent.